Okay, I'm going to shoot a tutorial on how to combine multiple exposures in Photoshop to create a really cool image. This one's going to be called Duet. So, I've got my camera set up over here. I've got the focus and the exposure locked. Now I've got it set to self-timer. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to activate the self-timer and I'm going to get into one of my poses. So the timer's activated. I'm going to come over here and I'm going to kind of make a pose like that. Then I'm going to come back and I'm going to activate the timer again. I'm going to come back here and get into another pose. Okay? And now I'm going to check those two poses and make sure it looks like they'll fit together. And it does. So now that's complete. We'll take the camera to the studio and go from there. Alright, now we're in the studio, aka my bedroom. And we've got Photoshop pulled up with the two images that you saw me take a minute ago. The one in this pose and then also that pose. So we've got both of those images open in Photoshop. And what we'll do, we will drag one on top of the other. Just drag it from that bottom pane and drop it on there. And then you can see over to the right over here that creates an additional layer. So with the top layer selected, we want to select the layer mask button and see that adds the layer mask right here. We select our layer mask and we select the fill tool over here, and here's where our colors are. We press X and that'll swap our default color to black, and then we can fill that layer mask. That makes that top layer completely invisible. So now what we're going to want to do with our brush tool right there, and now we want to swap our default color by pressing X back to white. There we go. And we are going to bump our brush size up a little bit, and we are going to brush back in that top image. And what we'll do is we'll get it pretty close, and then we'll come back in and work out the details afterwards. So get this guy painted in like that. There we go. Get the rest painted in down here, and we need to see his hands, don't we? There we go. And get these shadows. We need to paint these shadows back in. Always remember when you're combining multiple exposures that you want to make sure you get your shadows right. Because if you paint in the people and don't get the shadows right, it will look awkward and weird. So now you see we've painted back in this guy, but what we need to do is we've painted back in a little too much, because that prevents us from seeing through to the other pose that's behind. So we're going to switch back to our black color. We're going to decrease the size of our brush, and then to get this right, we're going to zoom in, for example, over in this area, because when we paint this back, we need to be fairly accurate so it looks realistic. I always get it close with a pretty large brush, and then you decrease your brush size by using the left bracket, or you can increase the brush size by pressing your right bracket, and then you just basically paint this in. And it really takes a little bit of time to get these perfect, and I'm going to try to go ahead and rush through this so that you guys don't have to sit there and just watch me edit this. Try to get that just right there. Okay, so that seam looks pretty good. And now we'll come down here and we can see my hands here, but we need to be able to see the hands back here as well. So let me bump this brush size a little bit, and we'll make sure we get all of this action. So we've got some shadows there, and so bring these hands back in like that. And then let's reduce our brush size so that we can bring in all the details here. Just like that. Just kind of following those contours, and it's really not very difficult. It's just a little bit time consuming, but it can be fun. And the blending is kind of tough in these really tight areas, so I really like to zoom in tight, and you can really get these areas just right here. Just carefully working that by hand, and you can get just as detailed as you want to with this. Okay, I'm going to zoom back out. And see, that looks pretty good. Now we've got a sharp edge here where these shadows really don't mesh, so I'm going to go up here and select a softer brush, maybe like a, let's say a 200, and I'm going to come in there and just kind of brush over that, and that's just going to blend those shadows back in. Okay, and we'll zoom back out, and there's our image, Duet.